Melissa, we've been seeing an uptick in use and occupancy agreements, and this is something that I want our listeners to be well versed in. And I love the fact that you brought this up as something because I think you're probably, when you're going through this with people, you probably have a lot of questions. People, not you, but people probably have a lot of questions to this. So this is a fantastic topic. First off, what is a use and occupancy agreement, and who would benefit from this?
The use and occupancy agreement is basically an opportunity where it outlines the parties' agreements in a post or pre-closing to have what it kind of intends, occupancy. So this happens most often when we see people who are simultaneously buying and selling. Because as you know, that moving day is extremely stressful, and especially when you complicate it with littles and pets, especially if it's a farther move, people may not be able to facilitate a same day. So I think the most common opportunity that I see it being used is when someone has negotiated to sell their house. They have a purchase that they're moving to in Massachusetts, let's just say. It's not that far, but it's just far enough. Mm-hmm. And they've decided it's going to be too difficult to facilitate a same day transaction. They may buy and sell on the same day, but they're going to hold over in their current home in Rhode Island for 3 days, 5 days, 2 weeks if their work, needs work done or whatever the case may be. So they will negotiate a use and occupancy to remain in their primary residence, despite the fact that they've already had a closing and sold the property to the new buyer.
Now, I've been seeing a lot more of this. You obviously have been seeing a lot more of this. Let's just say out of your past 100 transactions, how many of those transactions used a use and occupancy approximately?
Emilio, I would say probably about 75 to 80 of the last 100 transactions has included a use and occupancy agreement. Sometimes it's something that's contemplated very early in the purchase and sales agreement. Sometimes it actually comes up in the middle of the transaction.
Wow, that's intense. That's a lot of, I'm actually surprised by that number. I would say we're probably like around half.
The other way that I've seen the use and occupancy used, which I find a little bit scary, but has happened, is if somebody is under contract to sell their house, but they haven't found a place to go yet. So they've negotiated a use and occupancy through, I have one right now, it's closing this week, coming up, and they're going to be there until the end of September. Now, they know that they may not execute a purchase and sales and close on a new property within those next couple of months. So they're positioned with a contingency plan to rent. Not their first choice, but that's the other way that we see this happen. So I think that's part of the reason that this has so much popularity, is because instead of having the transaction subject to them finding suitable housing, which makes their offer less strong as a buyer, now it's subject to their successful sale, they've already got the cash in hand. So that's one of the advantages or benefits. If you're selling your home and you don't have a place to go, you put the use and occupancy in place, you've already got all of your funds liquid, ready to go, you look like a more attractive buyer. So that's the other reason we see it active. Amelia, one thing that I want to just implore is that if you are in a transaction and you're thinking, yeah, I need this, it's not enough just to handwrite something into the purchase and sales agreement. This has to be fully developed. And my office actually has a use and occupancy addendum that I drafted pursuant to a continuing ed course that I offer for real estate agents here in Rhode Island that speaks to all of the negotiated terms that parties need to consider, where many times we know sellers are going to hold over, but the contract doesn't ever stipulate, will there be a security deposit? How long is this going to be? What are the costs of the use going to be? What about insurance? What about utilities? What about if something lets go, right? I mean, this is a real transaction. Months ago, I had a transaction that closed in April. Clients were going to be leaving at the end of June. Not that long, couple of months. Hot water tank let go in the middle of May. What happens? Whose responsibility is it going to be? So these are the kinds of things that we as good real estate attorneys and contract lawyers need to be contemplating and addressing within the confines of the purchase and sales, which is why it's beyond just a handwritten, seller's going to stay at the property for free until, end of August or whatever the timeframes are. Make sure it's being fully developed.